Hello, my name is Eyal. This is the Jacksonville Java User Group meetup of April 2022. And we have Cătălin Tudose that will talk about efficient Spring data REST development, how to make it more efficient, more user-friendly. And we're excited to have this talk. This is something that everybody either has to implement or has to use when you do development nowadays with services, microservices, etc., web development. So it's a very appealing subject to a wide audience. So if you guys can hear me, can see us, etc., can you give me some feedback with the emojis? Okay, great, thank you. So remember, we have the messages, we have the questions and answers. You can use those to communicate with us. And if anybody at the end wants to join us as the stage, let me know. I'm going to leave the stage to Cătălin. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the JAG.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Eyal, for inviting me. We are going to spend some time to talk about efficient Spring Data REST development. We are going to remind you a few things, then we are going to have a look at how to optimize, how to make our applications more efficient. Just to introduce myself, I am Cătălin Tudose. I am born and raised in Romania. I live in Romania. I am currently acting as a Java and web technologies expert at Luxoft in Bucharest. Besides this, I am the author of this JUnit in Action 3rd edition that was published by Manning in November 2020. And there is another book about Spring Data and Hibernate to be published this year. Also, I'm author of 6 courses and 1 project at Pluralsight, and I'm involved in the Java world for about 20 years now. To move to the topic of this presentation, we would like to quickly remind something about REST. What is REST? What do you use it for? It's the acronym from Representational State Transfer. It's a software architectural style that allows interoperability between the internet and computer systems. So we would like to request a system that can access and manipulate web sources that are represented as text. And in order to do this, we use a set of well-known stateless operations that we are enumerating here. Get, post, put, patch, delete are these stateless well-known operations. This REST architectural style is not protocol specific, but most widely we use REST over HTTP. We can represent the state through JSON in most cases, but also through XML or HTML. So when we would like to access some resource, we have to do 2 things. We have to identify the URL of that resource, and we have to specify the operation that needs to be performed from those that I have enumerated: get, post, put, patch, delete. We'll spend a lot of time with code. And I'm going to introduce now an application that will serve as our driver, as our vehicle for making demonstrations and for examining how we can make things more efficient. We are here managing users that come as an auction. And we say we have an entity user, so it has some correspondent in the database. that is having an ID. That's why we are using this annotation ID. The ID is a generated value, so we don't have to care about it. It will be the database system that will provide it to us. And the user is specified by name, the fact that he or she is registered or not to a system, or he or she is citizen of the United States. And we have to create such a repository. I'm going to work a lot on it. This is the repository that makes the connection between the entity and the database. Here we are specifying that we are managing entities of type user having IDs of type long. And for loading users, we are taking them from this CSV that is prepared here, just loading them for our application. What's also important to mention is the front-end part, that is the user controller. So here we specify we would like to access a few endpoints. Say whenever you access this user's endpoint, let's delegate to the repository and say find all users that are there. Or whenever I'm accessing users and I'm trying to create a user, then I will save it to the database, and so on. And this is a Spring Boot application, originally created with Spring Boot. I'm going to to open it here to start it. And if I'm going to access here localhost 8081, localhost 8081/users, I'm going to get all this information about our users. We have inserted 20 users in the database numbered from 0 to 19. Our application is running on port 8081. You may go here, have server port 8081 specified in this application properties. So this is simple thing to do, but we would like to investigate many things about how this application works and how it can be made more efficient. If I go here to this command rest, you will see that I have inserted here a few REST commands that I'm going to experiment. And let's try to get user with ID 1. And we are getting it. That's fine. But if I want to take it again and again, I'm going to send the request, and from the server, I'm going to receive back the same answer. And this may be a waste of time and resources, because if I have already received this user and I'm having the latest version of it, receiving it again and again will make no sense. It will be a waste. So I want to make my application more efficient. And in order to reduce the traffic across the network and to say I already have this version of this user or of this whatever record I have, I can use e-tags. So what's an e-tag or an entity tag? It's some response header in the HTTP response header that is returned by the web server to determine the change in the content. I want to control that data to be retrieved. And if I go back here and I look at what I received, you see here, I'm receiving here this e-tag which is a hash code, in fact, that is calculated based on the fields from the user entity. And in order to have this e tag, I need to add here to my Spring container these two bins that are talking about shallow e tag header filter and the filter itself. So adding these two bins to my Spring container will enable this e tag to be sent back to the client. And what can the client do? The client may request something, but say, give it to me only if it does not match this e tag. So the e tag will be recalculated based on the content of the record, and you will get this only if you don't have it. So if I say here, give it to me if none match this e tag, I'm going to get here response code 304. This means not modified because I already have it. Just to make an experiment here, if I will modify this e tag, I will be given the full record because it is supposed, okay, you don't have the latest version. Okay, that's one way to optimize, to make things efficient. But I want to do something more here. And I am going to go back to this controller that I was talking about that represents the front end part. And we see here it is annotated with REST controller. We are injecting here the repository and we say, okay, if I want this, let's delegate to the repository. If I want this, let's delegate to the repository. In general, I'm delegating to the repository. And this may bring a question mark. Can I get rid of this controller? Let me just remove things from here. So now the controller does not contain anything any longer. It's just a class. I am going to restart this application. It takes a few seconds to restart. I go here to the browsers. I will keep this page as a witness, and I'm going to insert here again to access localhost 8081/users. And you see that I'm getting these records again, but a little different than how they were looking like, in the sense that not only that I'm getting all the information for users from 0 to 19, but I'm also getting links to self or to other ones so that I can easily, to the whole collection here, so that I can easily navigate inside the collection. Here, you don't know how to navigate. In most cases, new users that are trying to access a REST application don't know anything about it. They would like to be guided, and here is one of the beauties of Spring Data REST and one of the things that make our life easier. We are allowed to navigate here inside the collection easily, or we can even make some pagination. This comes as a gift because we are using Spring Data REST. But let's go back to the code and remember that I removed this REST controller. Yes, so it is no longer here, and you may wonder what is happening. What is happening so that Spring Data REST is able to do similar things even better without the presence of this controller. And the fact is that Spring Data REST will come and say, I have this repository. Yes, great. So I will be able to expose this repository to the front-end world so that you don't need this controller that in most cases it is doing some trivial things, just forwarding the request to the repository. So it is exposing all functionality to which path. It also has some rules here. It will say, what are you managing here? You are managing a user? Yes. So by default, I'm going to expose this user entity to users. It makes the plural to the users path. So you access here to the users URL and everything that you are writing here by hand, get mapping / users, whatever, is no longer needed. All this repository is exposed there. Maybe this is too much, but we are going to go back to this idea. So if I'm going to try something more from here, for example, I'm going to get this user, yes, and I'm going to get this p tag now, and I will say, okay, don't give it response body is empty. But I want to be even more efficient, and I may say, do I have any alternative to these e tags? They are nice, but they need to be calculated each time. May I replace them somehow? And the fact is that if I look at this user entity, I may introduce here a new field that is annotated with version. When I keep the version of an entity, I may have this column to identify if I am having the latest version or not. So I will introduce this version annotated, and I may say, let's keep on the client side the version, and when I request to the server something, just compare my version to the version from there, not calculate those hashtags. So I can go here to this application, and let's remove those bins that were providing the shallow e tag head filter. So let's put it here. Let's rerun the application and see what is happening. Okay, I started this, and I'm going back to this command rest and say, give me user 1. Yes, it gives user to me, response code 200. Okay, let's have a closer look here. We have an e tag here, but we have a different e tag. You see, it's e tag 0 because it is version 0 that I have received. So this newly added version annotated field is in fact also used as an e tag. So I can go here and I can say, let me use it, say, give it to me if it does not match 0. So response body is empty, 304. Let's demonstrate that I can change it. So let's patch this user. You see, it says etag 1. But if I request here saying I have version 0, I am receiving the new updated version. If I will say if not match 1, response code 304, great, I already have that version. Don't waste the time to send it back to me. Just say not modified. Good. So we have these ideas of how to make more efficient things about keeping the last versions and about accessing the repository. But let's go back to the repository and remember what I was saying a few minutes earlier, that accessing it fully may be too much, because now I expose all functionality, including, for example, the possibilities to delete. I want to prohibit such a functionality. So if I go here to JPA repository interface, I will see that I'm inheriting a lot of methods that are provided by Spring Data, and I want to prohibit, for example, this deletion. So I can go here to my user repository and say, yes, I am inheriting these methods. I'm overriding here saying don't export such a method. So if you want to export, no, it's not allowed. So I can use this REST resource annotation with the value with the option exported equals false. So let's restart the application with this modified code that I am expecting to prohibit me to access these delete methods. Okay, let me close a few tabs from here. So if I go here and I would like to delete, for example, user number 1, I will get 405. This is client error because I'm not allowed to delete something. I have stopped. I have rejected deletions from here. What else can I do? I was saying that by default, Spring Data REST will expose this repository on the user's path. So if I'm going to add this annotation here, repository REST resource path users, I'm not going to change anything. This is the default behavior. But I may customize my path and let's say my users here. Expose this repository with this configuration, whatever I'm rejecting the deletions, on the my users path. So if I go here and I'm trying to access the old URL, it is no longer available. But if I go here to say my users, you see I am getting the same thing, but on a different URL. So this is something customizable. I may even have my own path. In most cases, probably I will keep the default one, but it's good to know that I am allowed to change it. Let's think about something more. I have demonstrated how to prohibit the access to some methods from the repository, but I may want to prohibit the access to some fields. For example, I would say, let's not expose this one. Let's limit the data that is passed to the client. And I may come here and I may annotate this. Say JSON ignore. Don't expose it. So if I am restarting this application, I will keep this as witness. Yes. And I'm going, let's forget about pages, and now it is on the user's path. So you see, previously the citizenship information was exposed, while here it is no longer present. So this is a way to restrict the access to the information from inside the entity. We have presented this thing to how to restrict the access to information from entity and how to restrict access to methods from the repository. Now, before moving further, I would like to make a remark here, because we started with this controller and we have pretty quickly removed it. You may ask yourself, when shouldn't I use this Spring Data REST possibility to expose the repository? Because I still have a lot of options. This is true, but you may think about writing your own controller and not use Spring Data REST and its capabilities of exposing a repository when you have here some logic, some business logic, some rich business logic. Because here, in most cases, we were providing a shortcut directly to the repository. But you have some additional business logic, then you should consider implementing your REST controller and write some additional code. Okay, let's go back to the slides and see what else Spring Data REST is providing to us. We may talk about side effects, about treating events. And we have two ways of generating REST events and treating REST events, with the help of a handler and with the help of a listener. And I'm going to immediately demonstrate. I have another application. Here it's similar, but I created a separate project for the ease of use here. I'm starting it, and I was saying that we have the possibility to use handlers and the possibility to use listeners. So I have here a handler and I have a listener. What do I have here? I have my handler that is annotated with service and repository event handler. So it will be part of the Spring container. And here I may have methods annotated with handle before create, handle after create, whatever, before, after event. This is one way to go with the help of handlers. Or we may go with a listener by extending this abstract repository event listener that you see it is here, and it is providing similar methods on before create, on after create, whatever, that are empty, are protected. So if we want to use them, we have to override them and to make them public, specifying here the additional behavior for the events. So if I will go here and I will say, let's delete something, I may look here and I'm going to see this additional behavior: handler listener before, handler listener after. Or if I post something, again, I may get this additional behavior: handler listener before, handler listener after. Now you may ask yourself, okay, they are doing similar things, they have some difference, which one should you prefer? Just a moment, please. I would say my point of view is that all other things being equal, I would prefer handler, because I can go fully with annotations, meaning with meta information, and I will avoid hanging here in a hierarchy extending some other class. Okay, that was about events, about handlers and listeners. And we may inspect some other facility of Spring Data REST that would like to help us to customize our views. Besides the default view that Spring Data REST is providing and that we have already seen, I may ask, let's give some customized view, because I want to get things differently. Let's see what this means. I have here another application. It's similar, but we keep things separate. What I inserted here is this projection, annotated with the projection annotation, and we'll say, I will provide you this projection with the name summary. What will you project? You are going to project entity user. And what will your projection contain? Only the name and this newly introduced address. But how would you expose it? If I look here, I'm seeing street, zip code, city, state, whatever. But I'm going to go here and say, I would like to expose it using this toString method. In fact, this piece is Spring Expression Language, it is called. And it will say, okay, I will provide you the result of this address toString that is showing things differently. So let's have a look. I have started this, and let's keep this as witness. And say projection summary. So you see here, I am exposing only the name and the address. The other fields from here, like is registered, is citizen, are not there. And the address is looking like the toString method, because this is what I specified when I created this projection. One more thing here, if we look at this repository, we are going to meet again this repository REST resource annotation, pass users, but here I am having this additional option saying exert projection user projection.class. What does it mean? It means that by default, if you are accessing the whole collection, present it through this projection. It is called excerpt in this case. So when I'm presenting here the whole collection, you will not present it field by field, but just the way I am saying, use this projection to expose everything. I will remove this just to better see the difference. Restart the application. It takes a few seconds. And I'm going to get this again from here. And you see that we have a completely different view than this one provided by the excerpt. Yes, I'm having here address broken into the fields registered citizen, which is not present here through this view. So this is another thing that you may think about when you would like to make your Spring Data REST applications more efficient, more customized. So that was the presentation. That was the code demonstration. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward for things to discuss, for questions.
Okay, that was great. Anybody wants to come onto the stage and ask questions or make comments, or otherwise use the text messaging or questions and answers? I know this is not really pertaining to the main points that you were making, but I'm just curious. I wasn't paying attention. Perhaps you were not using an actual database, right? You were using an in-memory. Was it like
an in-memory database, but using a database like Oracle, MySQL will not change things.
Right. I just didn't pay attention what was actually.
I didn't emphasize anything on this because this is transparent for
Right.
our demonstration and for our purpose. This is transparent. Where you store your data, it's the same thing. Doesn't make any difference.
I'm not familiar with that commands.rest. Is this an IntelliJ thing? I would just...
Yes, so this is IntelliJ. So here I may run this REST commands only in the ultimate version. From my knowledge, the community version does not allow to run REST commands from within the IntelliJ IDEA.
And the e-tag, when you add it to the request, is it a header?
The e-tag, yes, it was. Let's.
If you go back to the commands REST where you send the request, I just
let me restart this.
Okay.
And the e-tag should be in the header. Just on. Okay, I have started it. So if I'm saying let's take user 1, you have here the e-tag in the header.
Okay, so when you request that in the request, you use it as an additional header, like the content type?
Yes, so this will be something additional in the header, but with some purpose. we talk about efficiency, we talk about optimization, we talk about benefits, but these things don't come for fully free. Okay, we add something to the header, and it is this field that I have annotated here with the version annotation.
And I maybe also missed that. When does the version change?
The version changes when I am patching, when I'm changing it. So here I have version 0, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back here and say, give it to me unless it is 0. It is 0 now, yes? Now response body is empty. Response body is empty, 304, not modified. But let's say that I'm taking this user one and I'm patching it. So I'm changing its content. Somebody else is changing or at the level of the database. And when I'm saying here get, I say I'm having version 0. Don't give it to me if it is 0. But now it is providing it back to me because meantime the version changed and consequently the e tag became 1. If I will come here and use it 1, okay.
So the if none match is a header as well, right?
Yes, yes. This needs to be added in the header. So I'm having this version. If it is the latest one, don't give it to me.
Okay. And I see a comment saying it was maybe a JSON file. I'm not sure what it's referring to.
I didn't understand.
But normally when you return the response, it will be, in this case, it will be JSON by default. And if it matches, then the JSON will be empty, correct? The body will be an empty JSON. Okay. Any other questions?
So just to add from my side, that you may get here the code into my GitHub repository, efficient Spring Data REST.
Can you put that in the text messaging, and I will try to highlight it as well. And there is another question in the text in the messages as well.
If I go here, I was just a moment.
And I'm going to show it on stage.
For the whole query, I think this would be more complicated because it will mean that nothing changed. Let's see if I'm getting the whole query. Yes, these users. You will see that I don't have an e tag here. Yes, I'm providing the whole collection,
Okay,
but no e tag.
Is there something that can return just the users that are different and not the users that?
Yes, the whole collection is more complicated to think. Okay, maybe you added something, maybe you changed something. Working at the level of the whole collection is more complicated. So here we don't talk about e tag. You see, it's not in the header, but it is in the header if I am getting some individual record. Okay, the whole collection is something more complicated to say, okay, nothing changed. Okay, anything?
So I guess you will have to basically write a handler for that if you want to only return, show me unmodified users or something like this, or show new users, then you just implement your logic to do that.
Yes, you have to implement some logic, or to select those users that you would like to get, and see if those tags or those versions have changed for them. Okay, let me see if I missed something. Okay. So this is the repository. I have shared it with you. If you want to get in contact with me, you can easily find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Just to let you know something about what will be next. This is under preparation, so it is also related to the topic of our discussion today. Java persistence with Spring Data and Hibernate will be published this year.
So does it mean that people can already start reading parts of it?
Yes. So it is under what is called here MIP. MIP meaning Manning Early Access Program.
So people can actually read it, give you feedback.
Yes. So it is ready in proportion of 90%.
Do you mind putting the link to it as well in the conversation?
Let's put everything here. Sure. And why not, if you said, let's put the link to the first book that is about automated testing. This is published in November 2020, so it is already fully available. Anything else?
I don't see any more questions. That was great. I definitely learned a lot. I don't think I've known anything about all those improvements that you discussed today. So I'm grateful for you for coming here. Thank you for staying awake late at your time zone to make it to the meeting. I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody else who showed up today. And hope to see you in future meetups.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.